Yep, another bear video. But the show is too good to not talk about, so that's my defense. With a finale that was as tasty as the meals that we saw getting cooked in the show, there was more than met the eye with what we saw unfold. We had a 12-minute single-take shot, development of the character arcs in interesting directions, and an episode that I would define as the end of the beginning of the show. This was an episode that was extremely valuable and had loads to take away from it, which could point towards the direction of Season 3. So grab your knife and fork as I present to you the reason why The Bear Season 2 Episode 10 is so important. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. By the way, if you like the video, do me a solid and hit subscribe. Okay, let's let it rip. The development of the characters. One reason as to why I would say that this episode marked the end of the beginning is because all of the characters other than Carmy had developed and moved on from where we saw them at the start of Season 1. We had Richie, who was bossing it up and leading the front of house operations and then swooping in and saving the day in the kitchen by managing the orders. Marcus had worked out what was important to him in the kitchen and had perfected his skills and was on the pathway to becoming the type of chef that he wanted to be. Tina and Ibra found their sense of belonging in the kitchen again, despite all of the change that they underwent after the sense of outdatedness that they felt, and Sydney was on the level playing field that she felt as though she deserved to be on when it came to being a partner in the restaurant. So all of these characters had an extreme amount of progression, marking the end of the beginning for them. Plus, the goal had always been to create a restaurant called The Bear, dating back to when Carmy used to speak with Mikey, so it was very much like a dream of his had finally come true. The main thing that he was progressively working towards had happened, allowing that bear that had such meaning during the very first scene in the opening episode of Season 1 to now be on a sign above the door. Carmy's development though, that's one that I found to be extremely interesting. Whilst all of the other characters progressed in this season of the show, Carmy was progressing. And then, in the final episode, he regressed to the place where he was back in Season 1. He had finally achieved the dream that he held in being able to open the restaurant that he used to talk to his brother about, yet he could only think about how much of a failure he was due to the distracted nature that he had inside of his mind. He was harsh on himself, the harshest we had ever seen him be, and I think that's something that we're going to see moving forward into the next season of the show. Despite Carmy seeming as though he has a lot of his life together, when you take a closer look, he has a partially broken mind, and the fact that he still hadn't warned his brother properly, it showed us that it was one piece of trauma that amongst everything that he had on his shoulders, it was continuing to weigh him down, because he still hadn't processed it. That's along with the stress of opening the restaurant, him being hard on himself, him having the memories of his old boss telling him that he was worthless, and also the troubled relationship with his mother. They are all things that will continue to be carried over into the next season, and as everybody progresses, it seems as though Carmy is going to stay the same, or continue to regress if he doesn't try to solve what's going round in his head. The relationship with Claire. The breakdown of the relationship with Claire was a moment that I felt was rather symbolic, not only of this episode but of the entire history of Carmy. We had never seen Carmy in any kind of relationship before, not even in Season 1, and within this season we saw the character Claire serve as a means to show us that Carmy did have the ability to get distracted, something that he had never been in his life before. But I think the breakdown of the relationship and the reason for its decline was something that led to a revelation that was a little bit deeper and darker, and that's the fact that Carmy doesn't know how to be loved or give love in a way that's understandable. If you think about it, he came from a family life where his mother and father weren't really that loving towards him. His mother and father were no longer together in the present day, he had no relationship with Donna in the present day, and for the entirety of his life he had been focused on one specific thing, being the best chef that he could possibly be. So he doesn't actually know how to love, hence why it took him so long to even realize that he was in a relationship with Claire, because he didn't know what it looked like or felt like. Hence why he ended up pinning all of the negativity on that one specific thing, even though it wasn't actually about that. He only blamed Claire because it was something that was different in his life, so that way he could assign the blame directly to it. The regret that was present on his face when he was listening to the voicemail of Claire telling him that she loved him was something that was evident to see, and it reminded me of when Carmy messaged Sydney after she walked out of the restaurant in Season 1. He knew that he had done wrong and let a good thing go in his life, so I do wonder if it will be something that he will look to get back in Season 3. Personally, I don't think it will be. I think we'll see the character almost feel as though he stepped too far, and like the rest of his family, just brush it aside and deal with it at a later date. Carmy Is Donna. One really interesting thing that this episode showed us was that Carmy was extremely similar to his mother despite him not wanting to be, and him trying his best to not resemble her in the slightest. Donna struggled with mental health issues, which essentially made her feel as though nobody appreciated her in her life and that she was worthless. This final episode of the season showed us that exact same mindset going round in Carmy's head. He was telling himself that he was worthless as he had all of the negative things in his life flashing around inside of his mind, showing us and himself that he's most similar to his mother when compared to the rest of the siblings. This also makes sense as to why he has the over-the-top, loud, brash temper that we didn't ever see from Sugar or Mikey. Even when Mikey was angry, he was able to contain it at times and keep a lid on it, something we didn't ever see from Carmy. I think this means that in Season 3 we're going to have to see him face the issues that he has with his mother head on in order to truly move on from it all and put it all to bed and be able to move on with a positive mindset. Marcus's mirroring of Carmy. In this finale, we saw that Marcus was very much heading down a similar pathway to what Carmy was in terms of his career and the way in which he was progressing with life. With Marcus going off to Copenhagen to work with Luca and adopting the "every second counts" motto and putting it up at the end, we saw that upon his return from Denmark, the attention and focus had moved away from his mother, who was in a critical condition, and instead moved more towards the cooking. Although not deliberate, it showed the slippery slope that can eventually lead towards the chaotic mindset and obsession that Carmy had. This ultimately resulted in the end with it looking as though Marcus's mother had died. I think this is going to be particularly interesting to see in the next season of the show, because this could grind Marcus's progress to a halt, and he may start to resent cooking as Carmy did Claire because of the distraction that it caused, and the fact that he wasn't as focused on taking care of his mother. So it's something that's definitely going to be interesting to see how it develops in the next season. Sydney's triumph. If there was one thing that this episode told us about Sydney, it was that in terms of her headspace, she was in a much better place than Carmen, and she was able to sail through the evening with no issues whatsoever. Prior to Carmy even being locked in the refrigerator, she was calm, cool, and collected. The smile on her face at the end was indicative of that mindset that she had, and maybe even made her realize that she could well do it on her own and not rely on Carmy as much. There was a sense of unhappiness that was present within her in this season of the show, as she felt as though Carmy wasn't pulling his weight. So the successful nature of the evening could be something that makes her realize her own value, and that she doesn't need to rely on him as much. I doubt she'll go on her own, but we may well see a new, more confident Sydney that wants to be on an even more level playing field with Carmy moving forward. She wants to get that star for the restaurant, and I think Season 3 of the show is going to be all about that. The restaurant will be open in Season 3, and it will mark the end of the beginning, as that was always the main goal and dream that Carmy had, and he achieved it. Now it's about entering the next chapter of the story and seeing him address all of the issues that he's got buried within him that we've seen the entirety of the 2 seasons of the show giving to us, along with the restaurant looking to get a star. And this episode set all of that up so perfectly, especially the direction for Carmy. I hope we only have to wait 1 year for the next season, because this show is genuinely one of the best shows on television at the moment, and I feel it flies under the radar completely. But yeah, that's why The Bear Season 2 is so important, because it set up the next season so well and had all of those intricacies. What did you think of Season 2 Episode 10? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.